About 15 years ago, at the turn of the millennium, I had the great privilege of serving on a committee here of the Academy to pick the most outstanding engineering accomplishments of the last century. In fact, I was thinking this morning, after our last meeting, I walked up to the Foggy Bottom Metro with Neil Armstrong, and he didn't have a card for the Metro, and he didn't have any small bills, and we just sat there by the machines, and people were streaming past us. And I said, "You walk on the moon, but you can't ride the Metro?" The last I saw him, he was walking up the stairs out, and that was it. So anyway, so based on the social impact of engineering, we picked the 20 the greatest achievements of engineering in the last century. You know, it made me really proud to be an engineer. I look back on that, what an incredible century of change. I think we did that. I was damn proud, you know, just as an engineer, of what we were able to accomplish. I think in terms of the life of my mother, her life almost spanned the century exactly. She was born in 1902 and died in 1998. She grew up on a farm in Virginia with no electricity, no radio, no telephone, you know, and yet, she told me how when an airplane flew over the farm, what a miracle that was. And yet she lived to see, on television, a man walk on the moon and the rise of the internet. What an incredible century. But will we be able to make the same kind of change in this next century? Or is it possible that there'll be diminishing returns with technological solutions to society's problems? Now, I don't know. But perhaps when this century closes, the NAE will again put together such a list. And they'll look at this century and say what the greatest achievements that we made were. Sadly, none of us will be around to see that list. But I'd like to sort of speculate, what do we know about it now? We're 14 years into this century. And if I look for guidance back to the last century, what did we know in 1914 about what the great accomplishments would be of that century? And amazingly enough, I divide this into three categories sort of in my mind. Things that by 1914 were sort of already there. Things that might have been deduced in 1914 about the rest of the century. And finally, things about no clue whatsoever, you never could have guessed. And in the first category, things that were sort of already there, four of the top 5 things in our list of achievements were already well underway in 1914. The first one on our list was electrification. Without that, you could have nothing else. But by 1914, power plants were being built all over rapidly. AC power had come into prominence then. Second on our list was the automobile. The automobile changed where we live and how we live. Tremendous social impact. But Ford brought out the Model T in 1908. So the automobile was there at this time in the last century. Number 3 on our list was the airplane. But Kitty Hawk was in 1903. So planes were already there. Number 5 on our list was the radio, but radio had been invented right almost at the turn of the century, and it came into public prominence with the sinking of the Titanic in 1912. So we knew about radio. So right away, there are 4 things that you already knew about in the year 1914 about what would happen last century. And then there are some things that you might guess at. You think, now we've got a car, we can build highways, and the highway system is on our list. Now that we've got electricity, maybe we can put appliances in the home. Maybe we can mechanize farming. And those, again, are on our list. Now, a few other things, too. So you actually knew quite a bit. But there was no way in 1914 that you could have foreseen the integrated circuit, the internet, the laser. You might guess at computers, you might guess at space travel, but just things that just came about. Now, some of those came about through singular inventions, that had tremendous repercussions. I haven't seen any of that yet this century, such as the transistor and integrated circuit, the laser, those kind of transformative moments in engineering that just have percolate through the years afterwards. So I think, though, that if you ask people in the street, you know, what are the great engineering accomplishments of this century now, they might say, they might give you 4 names. Google, Amazon, Twitter, Facebook. Those are not technologies. They're companies. If you would ask someone in 1914 that question, they might have said telephone, radio, whatever. So there's a different mystique. I mean, it's kind of playing with this idea that companies, now it's not technologies, but business ideas and company ideas like that can happen. So I really find it very sad that I won't be around to see what these great accomplishments are going to be, but I could say I'm waiting with bated breath, but my breath will be very bated by the time these inventions come about. So we'll all see. Maybe we can talk about what we see now as emerging. And I'll give you a couple things that I see for this century as emerging right now. First, I would say wireless. You know, the last century was a wired century. The telephone, electrification, the cable network, optical fiber, was a wired. And now we've already had this transformation into a wireless world. And I would bet that comes on the list. And then there are things that sort of could come about that I could imagine. And I would say machine intelligence. We see an emergence of this. And maybe at the end of the century, we'll be talking about machine intelligence going widely distributed around. So that's possible. Possibly 3D printing will transform the way products are produced. So there are indications here, but what we know now that we don't know, those will be the miracles that none of us, unfortunately, will be able to see. Thank you very much.